And there's a few special ability, high professional type visas, the O-1,
Yes.
EB-1A, and then EB-2 NIW. At a high
Yep.
level, could you just talk a little bit about the differences between those visas?
Sure. So I always like to, explain it. I mean, just you got to look at it as steps, right? So obviously EB1 is sort of like the Mercedes-Benz or the Rolls-Royce, right, of the visas. And I mean, the letter of the law says it's for people who have extraordinary abilities, right? Then you have the EB2, right, which is exceptional abilities, right? But it has to be in the national interest. Then you have EB3, which is unskilled, skilled other workers, sort of like sort of lower positions. In terms of the O1, I like to compare the O1 to. I don't like to say that's less hard because nothing is a little bit less hard in immigration, but it's not as difficult as the EB1, but it's a temporary visa, right? And it's also a really good jump off to also go to eventually either an EB1 or an EB2, right? You can come in with an O1 visa. They have what they're looking at, and we'll go through, the criteria that they typically are looking at or they require. And this is pretty much the same thing, but the level of scrutiny is not as high when it comes to the O1 in comparison to the EB1, right?
Because they're not getting a green card at the end of the day.
Exactly. You're not getting a green card. But we found out that it's a great strategy if perhaps a candidate, we think that the candidate might be right there. We look at profiles and we try to, make sure that we're not picking profiles that are not going to be approved, right? That's not the point of this whole process, right? So when we feel like they're kind of sort of 50-50 or a little bit less than 50%, we suggest that they do the O1, because once you're in here and you have the ability to prove yourself, right? And then once you prove yourself in here, let's say you have a business or in the arts or finance or whatever it may be, you're able to have a sort of a evidentiary history that will fortify your application for a green card in the future. So it's a really good tool that we utilized before. And I think people that, perhaps might not be quite there for, say, an EB1 or an EB2 NIW, it's a good stepping stone, to
So
get
either
there.
O1, and then I've also seen E2, if it's
Yeah,
that
sure.
more type of entrepreneurial path.
Side. Yeah. You show that, you've had, your E2, your business, you've grown your business, you're employing Americans or residents, which is the purpose of the visa. And then with that history, it's a lot easier to make an argument that, it's in the interest of the United States, right, to have a person like you with entrepreneurial drive in order to, stimulate the economy, create more jobs, which is the point of all these visas are here, right?
And then on the O1, so it's essentially a talent visa, and they're going to look at your abilities. For the EB2, it's based on the proposed endeavor, what you're going to be doing in the U.S. and visa franchise. We can help, open the LLC, get the business bank account, business plan, get all that going, help with the idea generation of the proposed endeavor. But on the requirement side, say you don't have an advanced degree, you don't even have a bachelor's degree. Are the requirements kind of similar to meet that, ability requirement of the EB2 NIW as is the O1, or does it really vary?
So the O1, well, first off, the difference, a major difference is that, for example, for the EB1 and the EB2, you can do a self-petition, right? So when it comes to the O1, you need someone to sponsor you, depending on what you're doing, which one, O1 in particular. Some O1s, you only need sort of like an agent. There's agencies out there that sort of like give you the opportunity, they'll sponsor you, right? But they give you the opportunity to do sort of like work with different companies or different projects, but you still need that sponsor, right? In contrast with the EB1 or the EB2, you're just simply petitioning yourself. You're telling the government, look, I have talents, I have the capabilities that you're looking for. You want me to be there, give me a green card, and let me make your country a better place, right? But in terms of the criteria, it's very similar. They're looking at a lot of different criteria that is utilized as well for the O1, but just to a lesser degree, right? It's not, as intense as the EB2, like we said, or EB1, because you're not getting a residency, right? But you're getting a temporary visa, and it's a great stepping stone to go to the next ones.